हाँ जी, जोरदार तालियों से गुरुजी का स्वागत करें। जोरदार तालियां, हंसते हुए। अरे हंसते हुए में यार, मैंने हंसने का कहा था आपको। बहन जी हंसिए, हंसते हुए गुरुजी का स्वागत करेंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। प्लीज।
थैंक यू। ओम हसनम अनंतरम शांतिम प्राप्तम भवति हास्कम प्राणी मात्रेषु मैत्री च सौख्यम स्नेहम दयाम तथा अनिंद्रम द्वेष नैरास्यम असंतोषच्च दुर्भगा हास्य योगेन दूरच्च न आयाति ही पुनस्तथा हसन कंठमूले तत् चित्तवृत्ति निरोधका महिमा हास्य योगस्य मोदयंती च मानवा। ओम। हंसने मात्र से मेरे शरीर के समस्त विकार, अनिंद्रा, द्वेष, नैराश्य, आत्मसंतोष, आत्मग्लानि सदा के लिए विलुप्त होते हैं और पुनः लौटकर वापस नहीं आते। कंठ के मूल हृदय के समीप से हास्य भाव उत्पन्न करने से मन, प्राण, शरीर, आत्मा स्वस्थ, आनंदित, प्रसन्न और ऊर्जावान होते हैं। ओम। हमारे यहाँ जब हम भारतीय संस्कृति की बात करते हैं तो जो हमारे सबसे पुराने जो ग्रंथ हैं वेद, उनमें है एक ग्रंथ है आयुर्वेद। आयुर्वेद में स्वास्थ्य की एक डेफिनेशन है। मैं सिर्फ उसको यहां कोट करूंगा और उसके बाद आपको कुछ क्रियाएं कराऊंगा। आयुर्वेद में जो स्वास्थ्य की जो परिभाषा दी गई है वो परिभाषा है सम दोष है, सम धातु, सम अग्निश्चय मलयदय क्रिया। और उसकी सेकंड पंक्ति देखें, प्रसन्न आत्मेंद्रिय मन स्वस्थ इत्यभिधीयते। मीन्स कि मेरे शरीर में कोई दोष ना हो, मलमूत्र का त्याग होता रहे, धातुएं, सप्त धातु, खून, हड्डी, मज्जा ये सब ठीक ठाक हो, तो भी मैं स्वस्थ नहीं हूं जब तक मेरी समस्त इंद्रियां, ज्ञान इंद्रियां, कर्म इंद्रियां सभी प्रसन्न, हैप्पी नहीं हो जाती। आप सोचे, आज से 15,000 वर्ष पूर्व हमारे ऋषियों ने इतनी महत्वपूर्ण बात कही थी कि हंसना, प्रसन्न रहना, भीतर से आनंद का अनुभव करना स्वस्थ होने के लिए पहली शर्त है। लेकिन आज क्या है? आज स्थिति यह है कि यदि हमें कोई हंसता हुआ आदमी दिख जाए तो समझिए आज का दिन आपकी लॉटरी लग गई। आप सुबह से शाम तक सड़क पे चले जाइए, बाजार में घूम लीजिए, आप कहीं बिजनेस में चले जाइए, किसी से मिल लीजिए, हंसता हुआ आदमी अमूमन दिखता नहीं है। बहुत कम लोग दिखते हैं हंसते हुए। सुबह सुबह लोग पार्कों में सैर करने जाते हैं एंड यू विल ऑलवेज फाइंड द लॉन्ग फेसेस। अर्ली मॉर्निंग यू विल फाइंड द लॉन्ग फेसेस के सुबह सुबह ही सारे दिन भर का बोझ, सारे हिंदुस्तान की, सारे वर्ल्ड की टेंशन हमारे सर पे। आज सुबह से हम लोग यहां पे बात कर रहे हैं जीडीपी की, जीडीआई की, और वी आर टॉकिंग टू मच अबाउट जीडीपी बट वी फॉरगेट अबाउट जीडीएच, द ग्रॉस डोमेस्टिक हैप्पीनेस। क्योंकि जीडीपी के घोटाले में हम उस हैप्पीनेस को भूलते ही जा रहे हैं और यही कारण है कि हम ज्यादा बीमार, ज्यादा परेशान, ज्यादा दुखी हो रहे हैं। ऑल इंडिया मेडिकल साइंस की लास्ट ईयर की एक रिपोर्ट थी कि 90% बीमारियों की वजह हमारे माइंड से कनेक्टेड है और जब हमारे माइंड में टेंशन या स्ट्रेस होता है तो बीमारियां बढ़ती हैं। शुगर, अस्थमा, बीपी, हाइपरटेंशन, हार्ट की प्रॉब्लम्स, ये जितनी भी इवन गैस्ट्रिक ट्रबल, डॉक्टर्स का माने इवन गैस्ट्रिक ट्रबल जैसी बीमारी जो हम समझते हैं शायद बदहजमी या खाने से होती है, वो भी टेंशन की वजह से बढ़ती है और हम लोग टेंशन बहुत लेते हैं। हंसना हम लोग भूलते ही जा रहे हैं। अब बहुत सिंपल सी बात आ गई कि हंसना तो बहुत अच्छा है, हंसना इज गुड, लाफिंग इज द बेस्ट एक्सरसाइज, लाफिंग इज द बेस्ट वन। ओके फाइन, हंसे कैसे? दिस अ सिंपल क्वेश्चन, हाउ टू लाफ? देयर इज अ वेरी सिंपल आंसर, टू लाफ थ्रू जोक्स, थ्रू कॉमेडी मूवीज। मैं आपको 2-4 जोक सुनाऊं, कुछ एक्शन करूं, बढ़िया सी कॉमेडी करूं और आप हंसे। दिस इज अ फर्स्ट सिंपल एग्जांपल। लेकिन आप ये जान लें, शायद आपको मेरी बात सुन के बहुत सारे लोगों को ताज्जुब होगा और शायद एग्री भी ना हो, जोक्स पे हंसना अमूमन अच्छी हंसी नहीं है। वाई? सो सिंपल। जोक्स हम किस पे करते हैं? हमारे हिंदुस्तान में, इंडिया में, नॉर्थ में 90% जोक्स सरदारों के ऊपर होते हैं। इज इट करेक्ट? ओके। 10 से 5% हम बिहारियों पे करते हैं, हरियाणवी पे करते हैं। जितनी महिलाएं हैं वो अपने जितनी महिलाएं वो अपने पतियों पे जोक करती हैं, और सारे पति अपनी पत्नियों पे जोक करते हैं और ये साबित करते हैं कि पत्नियां सारी बेवकूफ होती है। इज इट करेक्ट? बेसिकली हम क्या करते हैं? कोई गंजा है तो उस पे जोक करते हैं, कोई मोटा है उस पे जोक करते हैं, कोई आदमी गिर गया उस पे जोक करते हैं, यानी हम दूसरे को टीज करके हंसते हैं। हम पाकिस्तानियों पे जोक करते हैं कि पाकिस्तानी बुरे होते हैं, इंडियन अच्छे होते हैं, और हम हंसते हैं। इज इट ए गुड लाफ? नो, इट इज ए रादर सरकास्टिक लाफ। दूसरे को टीज करके हंसना और अपने में आनंद लेना कभी भी सुंदर और प्योर लाफ नहीं हो सकता, नेवर। और दुनिया में 99.5% जोक्स सरकास्टिक जोक्स होते हैं, जिसपे हम दूसरे को टीज करके हंसते हैं। सेकेंडली, दिस इज ए कंडीशनल लाफ। यू पुट ए कंडीशन टू लाफ, कि कोई मुझे जोक सुनाए तो मैं हंसूं, कोई मुझे हंसाए तो मैं हंसूं। नो। क्या बच्चे को कभी आप कोई जोक सुनाते हैं? छोटा बच्चा आपकी गोद में उतर, आप कहते हैं हेलो बेबी, हाय, कैसे हो बेटा, हे, और बच्चा हंसता है। व्हाई द चिल्ड्रन इज लाफिंग? वी कांट लाफ बिकॉज बच्चे का माइंड पूरी तरह से प्योर है, क्लियर है। और हमने अपनी माइंड में बहुत सारी बाउंड्रीज बना रखी हैं, बड़े की, छोटे की, उम्र की, अफसरी की। मैं अफसर हूं, ये सीनियर है, ये जूनियर है, मैं अमीर हूं, ये गरीब है, मेरा बिजनेस यूएसए तक है और इसका बिजनेस सिर्फ इंडिया में ही है, या ये कंबोडिया में रहता है, बांग्लादेश में रहता है, और मैं स्वीडन में रहता हूं। दीज ऑल जो बाउंड्रीज जो हमने बनाई हैं, वो बाउंड्रीज हमें अपनी भावनाओं को, अपनी फीलिंग्स को एक्सप्रेस नहीं करने देती। वी स्टार्ट अवर लाइफ विद अवर ओन क्राई एंड वी एंड अवर लाइफ लेट्स अदर्स क्राई। हम अपने जीवन की शुरुआत अपने रोने से करते हैं और अपने जीवन का अंत दूसरों को रोता हुआ छोड़कर करते हैं। तो लेट्स फिल अप दिस गैप विद फुल ऑफ लव एंड लाफ। तो आए जीवन और मृत्यु के इस अंतराल को हंसी, खुशी और आनंद से भर दें। मैं आपको कोई जोक नहीं सुनाने जा रहा हूं, मैं आपको कोई कॉमेडी नहीं करने जा रहा हूं, मैं सिंपली आपके हार्ट को टच करना चाहूंगा और चाहूंगा कि अपने भीतर से उस हंसी को, जो आपके अंदर बच्चे की भांति दबी हुई है, उसे बाहर निकालें। That's why I always called, instead of brother and sister, I called my dear children. Why I called you children? क्योंकि केवल चिल्ड्रन है जो इंजॉय करते हैं, केवल बच्चे जिंदगी का आनंद लेना जानते हैं, बड़े केवल जिंदगी को खट्टा करते हैं, सजोते हैं, संवारते हैं, जिंदगी का स्वाद नहीं लेते। तो ठीक है, आए सभी लोग मेरे साथ शामिल होना चाहें। आप सब लोग हंसने के लिए तैयार हैं? जरा हाथ खड़ा करें। गुड। और कुछ नहीं, मैं चाहूंगा कि केवल अगले 15-20 मिनट जितने भी हमारे पास समय है, उतनी देर के लिए आप छोटे छोटे बच्चे बन जाएं और जस्ट फॉरगेट एवरीथिंग। योग मैं आपको करा दूंगा, योग की गारंटी मेरी है। आपने केवल हंसना है, आपने केवल मस्ती करनी है, आनंद लेना है, योग की चिंता नहीं करनी। योग मैं आपको करा दूंगा, हंसने का योग, हास्य योग। आए दोनों हाथ नमस्ते मुद्रा में, सभी लोग ज्वाइन करें। हथेलियों को हल्का सा प्रेस करें, कोमलता से आंखें बंद, एक लंबा गहरा श्वास, और एक बार सभी लोग मेरे साथ करेंगे ओम का उच्चारण। मन को बिल्कुल शांत, बच्चे के समान कोमल, सरल बनाएं। हंसते हुए आंख खोलें, सभी एक दूसरे को हंसते हुए नमस्कार करें। हंसते हुए नमस्कार करें। इस तरह चेक करें अपने हाथों को बढ़िया से। शेक करें हाथों को तेजी के साथ, ऐसे शेक करें। बहुत सुंदर, बहुत सुंदर। आप समझ रहे हैं हम केवल हंस रहे हैं, और आप देखेंगे हंसने के साथ आपको मैं कलाइयों का आपका ये योग करा रहा हूं, एक्सरसाइज साथ साथ हो रही है। आप कुछ भी काम करें, आप गाड़ी चलाएं, आप कलम चलाएं, आप गन चलाएं, आपकी कलाई में जितनी फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होगी उतनी सरलता से आप कोई भी कार्य कर सकते हैं। तो ये पूरा योग, खेल खेल में पूरा योग है। एक बार पुनः करेंगे, दोनों हाथ नमस्ते मुद्रा में, हथेली को हल्का सा प्रेस करें, कोमलता से आंखें बंद, लेंगे लंबा गहरा श्वास और हंसते हुए आंख खोलेंगे। सभी एक दूसरे को नमस्कार है। खुल के बिंदास एकदम। बहुत सुंदर, बहुत सुंदर। और दो क्रियाओं के बीच में हम क्लैप करेंगे। क्लैप करने का बहुत फायदा है। ये जो उंगलियों के पोर हैं, इन्हें टकराना है आपस में। ताली बजाने से बहुत बीमारियां दूर होती हैं। आंखों के लिए बहुत अच्छा है, बीपी के लिए, हाइपरटेंशन के लिए, हार्ट के लिए और शुगर के लिए। क्योंकि अभी जो लेटेस्ट इंफॉर्मेशन है, इंडिया में 75 करोड़ लोग शुगर की चपेट में आ चुके हैं। तो आप लोग बचना चाहते हैं तो क्लैपिंग करें और साथ में हम बोलेंगे हो हा हा हा। से समथिंग। ओके, इंसोमिनिया के लिए भी ये अच्छा है। इट इज ओके, थैंक यू फॉर एडिंग। देयर आर सो मेनी थिंग्स। लोगों के चश्मे उतरते हैं क्लैपिंग करने से, बहुत सारे फायदे हैं। साथ में बोलेंगे हो हा हा हा। ये गले में आपके थायराइड ग्लैंड्स होते हैं, उसके पीछे पैराथायराइड ग्लैंड्स, और योग में हम कहते हैं विशुद्धि चक्र भी यही होता है हमारा। तो इसको खोलना है। आपको खांसी, नजला, जुकाम, ये सब शिकायतें नहीं होंगी। दोनों हाथ खोल लें और मेरे साथ बोलेंगे। एक बार मैं बोलूंगा हो और आप बोलेंगे साथ में हा हा हा। हो हा हा हा। हो हा हा हा। हो 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 हो। बहुत सुंदर। तो हम दो क्रियाओं के बीच में बिटवीन टू एक्सरसाइज विल डू दिस एक्सरसाइज फॉर 2-3 टाइम्स। तो इन द होल सेशन यू विल गेट द बेनिफिट ऑफ दिस क्लैपिंग एंड हो हा हा जो हम नॉइस कर रहे हैं। ओके, द नेक्स्ट एक्सरसाइज पंछी हाथ से। अपने दोनों हाथ ऐसे होल्ड करें आगे सामने, इसको बिल्कुल ढीला छोड़ दें। दिस बेसिकली हमें लगता है हाथों की एक्सरसाइज है, बट इसका इफेक्ट हमारी नर्व से मिलके हमारी बैकबोन पे पड़ेगा। बिल्कुल ढीला छोड़ेंगे और हंसते हुए अपने हाथ चलाएंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच। हा 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 हा। पूरी मस्ती में, एकदम आनंद में कीजिए। हा 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 हा। Okay. Most of people knows about Kapalbhati. I think so. Yes? Okay. It is very simple to exercise this Kapalbhati. हम लोग कहते हैं बच्चे को एक बार क्या हा हा करके हंसता रहता है दिन भर, और डांट देते हैं बच्चे को। और आपको मालूम है हा में कितनी शक्ति है। केवल हा से आप कपालभाति कर सकते हैं। सीधा हाथ अपने पेट पर रखें। पुट योर राइट हैंड ऑन योर बेली, राइट हैंड ऑन योर बेली, और स्ट्रेट हो जाए। स्ट्रेट बैक अपनी आगे कर लीजिए। सिंपली चैंट हा एंड यू फील देयर इज अ कपालभाति। हा, वेट, हा। ओके, इज इट कपालभाति और नो? सिंपल। एक बार मैं करता हूं, एक बार आप करें। ले, हा 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 हा। सो कपालभाति सो सिंपल, बहुत आसान है। हम लोग क्या होता है, टीचर्स जनरली आसान चीजों को बड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड करके बताते हैं। क्योंकि कॉम्प्लिकेटेड करके नहीं बताएंगे तो क्या होगा, आप लोगों के टीचर है इसको नॉलेज ही नहीं है, तो इसलिए बड़े मुश्किल। इज सो सिंपल, जो बहुत आसान है उसमें बहुत शक्ति है। आएंगे, एक और बहुत सुंदर एक्सरसाइज कराऊंगा। सुनील जी, एक मिनट आए। आपको जरा माइक पकड़ना पड़ेगा। आई नीड माई बोथ हैंड फ्री। ओके, दिस इज ताली हाथ से। लेफ्ट हैंड अपना ओपन करें, हम लोग क्लैप करेंगे, लेकिन इस एक स्पेशल तरीके से क्लैप करेंगे। पहले एक उंगली से 5 बार, 1 2 3 4 5, फिर 2 उंगली से, फिर 3, फिर 4, और फिर एक साथ हंसते हुए ताली बजाएंगे। ओके, ऐसे ताली क्यों बजा रहे हैं, है ना? कहेंगे यार ये क्या मजाक चल रहा है, हम सीधे सीधे ताली भी तो बजा सकते हैं। नो, देयर आर सो मेनी एक्यूप्रेशर पॉइंट्स। ये प्रेशर पॉइंट्स होते हैं। जब आप एक साथ ताली बजाते हैं बहुत तेज से, तो आपके सारे प्रेशरों पे असर पड़ता है और आपके हार्ट पे असर पड़ता है। तो हम धीरे धीरे प्रेशर बढ़ाएंगे, पहले थोड़े से पॉइंट, फिर और पॉइंट, फिर बढ़ेंगे। ओके, स्टार्ट, रेडी, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5।
भाई और बहनों, आजकल गिफ्ट हैम्पर वोचर देने का उस चलन है ना। आज इस हाल में जो भी सबसे बढ़िया तरीके से हंसेगा, उसको एक हमारा सेंटर है बालाजी निरोग धाम। अभी नितिन जी ने बात की, नितिन जी भी होकर आए थे। नेचुरोपैथी सेंटर है, दिल्ली में ही है। वहाँ कोई दवाई नहीं दी जाती। उसको 3 दिन का, जिसको गुरुजी कहेंगे, इनको तो सब दिखाई दे रहे, हम तो उधर बैठे हैं ना, मैं तो कम दिखाई देगा। जिनको इनको कहेंगे जी, ये कपल, ये बहन, ये भाई, बड़ी जब मैं देख रहा बाबूजी बहुत बढ़िया हंस रहे, और भी कोई बढ़िया हंसेगा, तो जो भी दिल्ली में ठहरना चाहिए अब या 1 साल के अंदर कभी भी, पता मुझसे ले ले। 3 दिन के लिए वो, उसकी धर्मपत्नी, कोई बहन है तो उनके पति देव रह सकते हैं। धन्यवाद। चलिए देखो,
बट अगेन मैं फिर रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, बी ए चाइल्ड, ये बी ए चाइल्ड, बच्चे रहें, बड़ा ना बने। गिफ्ट के लालच में नहीं हंसना, क्योंकि लालच पे हंसेंगे अगेन कंडीशनल लाभ हो जाएगा। सुनील जी अगेन प्लीज कम। तो आप लोगों का अभी बैटरी चार्ज हुआ कुछ नहीं? हाँ नहीं, अभी बैटरी थोड़ा और चार्ज करेंगे। ओके, एक मिनट, दूसरे हाथ पे चेंज योर हैंड, क्योंकि इसको दोनों को हमें अभी हाँ जी, अभी संतुलन की बात हो रही है ना, एनवायरमेंटल और सारा संतुलन, तो संतुलन बॉडी में भी चाहिए। अभी आपने लेफ्ट करके छोड़ देंगे तो थोड़ा संतुलित हो जाएगा, इसलिए दूसरे हाथ पे भी करना जरूरी है। ओपन योर राइट हैंड, स्टार्ट काउंटिंग, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5। हालांकि ताली हाथ से क्रिया पद्मासन लगा के की जाती है। बहुत सारी क्रियाएं लेट की जाती हैं, डिफरेंट पोस्चर में की जाती हैं, वज्रासन में की जाती हैं। तो आप लोग चेयर्स पे बैठे हैं, मैं डेमो के तौर पे आपको करा रहा हूं। एग्जैक्टली सेम फॉर्म में नहीं करवा पाऊंगा। ओके, एक ट्रैक्टर हाथ से क्रिया करेंगे। हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं हमारे रूरल्स में किस तरह से डेवलपमेंट होता है। तो हमारे यहाँ पहले ट्रैक्टर होते थे, ऐसे स्टार्ट करते थे, गोल एक रस्सी होती थी, ऐसे गोल घुमाते थे, स्टार्ट हो जाता था। आजकल बटन आ गए, तो बटन आ गए तो ये कंधे आपके जाम हो गए, राइट। शोल्डर्स फ्रोजन की जिनको शिकायत है उनके लिए बहुत अच्छी एक्सरसाइज है। सीधा हाथ करें, मुट्ठी बंद, अंगूठा बाहर। देयर आर 2 वे टू क्लोज, मेक योर विस्ट लाइक दिस और दिस वे, अंगूठा बाहर। ओके, नाउ स्टार्ट द ट्रैक्टर। खोलें अपने शोल्डर्स को, हे 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 अभी स्टार्ट नहीं हुए। मोस्ट ऑफ द ट्रैक्टर्स आर ओल्ड, दे रिक्वायर लिटिल फिल्ट्रेशन। फ्रोजन, या फ्रोजन, दैट्स व्हाई आई टोल्ड यू अगेन एंड अगेन, बी ए चाइल्ड, बच्चा बने, बड़ा मत बनिए। फॉरगेट योर नेम, योर फेम, वेयर यू आर सिटिंग, जस्ट बी ए चाइल्ड, देन ओनली कैन यू एंजॉय योर लाइफ। ओके, नाउ लेफ्ट हैंड से फॉर लेफ्ट एब्डोमिनल के लिए, बेसिकली राइट और लेफ्ट 2 एब्डोमिनल है आके, उनके लिए एक्सरसाइज है। खोले, हे 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 वाह जी वाह. Now from both hands. खोल ले दोनों. Hey, 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 hey. Ha, ho. Ha, ho. Ha, ho. Ha, ho. आएंगे सभी लोग खड़े होंगे. खड़े होकर 2-3 क्रियाएं करेंगे. ओके. दोनों हाथ अपनी कमर पे रखें और अपने को बिल्कुल फ्री करें. एडी ऊपर नीचे. 1 2 चा चा चा. 1 2 चा चा. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. बिल्कुल झटका दीजिए. हल्का हल्का. बिल्कुल ढीला छोड़िए. 1 2 चा चा चा. 1 2. पैर ऊपर नहीं उठाना. केवल एडी को ऊपर नीचे. 1 2 चा चा चा. 1 2 1 2 1 2. बहुत सुंदर. इस तरह से अपना फिक्स करें दोनों हाथों को. पुट ऑन योर बेली. बेली पर रखेंगे और बेली की करेंगे मालिश. हंसते हुए मालिश. ऐसे फिंगर क्रॉस करें. बेली पे रखें और बेली की मालिश है. सुंदर. सब लोग अपना फेस इस साइड टर्न कर लें. राइट साइड. और जो आपके आगे खड़ा है उसके शोल्डर पे हाथ रखें. पुट योर राइट हैंड ऑन ए पर्सन शोल्डर स्टैंडिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ. ओनली राइट. वन हैंड. ओनली राइट. आगे आगे को बढ़ जाइए और रख लीजिए हाथ. बीच का गैप कम करें. दो लोगों के बीच का गैप. अपने बीच का गैप को कम करें. थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ जाएं. अगले के शोल्डर पे हाथ रख लें. बहुत अच्छी एक्सरसाइज कराने जा रहा हूं आपको. सभी लोग एक साथ करेंगे इसको. हाँ. थोड़ा आगे को आके अगले के हाथ कंधे पे हाथ रख लें. ओके. नाउ स्टार्ट करेंगे. सबसे आगे वाला अपना हाथ नीचे कर ले. हाँ. ओके. अभी आपने करना क्या है. हंसते हुए अपने आगे वाले की पीठ पे मालिश करनी है. दोनों हाथ से बढ़िया से करिए. चंपिए. नीचे तक लेके जाए. कमर तक. दोनों हाथ से कमर तक करें. वापिस ऊपर जाए. ओके. वेट. वहीं रुके. वहीं रुके. टर्न योर फेस दिस वे. वहीं खड़े खड़े अपना फेस टर्न कर लें. अगेन पुट योर राइट हैंड. अगेन पुट योर राइट हैंड. राइट हैंड. हाँ रखें. अभी आपने जिसकी चंपी की थी अब उसकी आप करेंगे. ओके. नाउ स्टार्ट. बहुत सुंदर. वेरी गुड. वेरी फाइन. थैंक यू. मेरी तरफ आ जाए एक बार. एक हाथ. दोनों हाथ से. फ्रॉम बोथ हैंड्स. यहीं रुकेंगे अभी. यू केम हेयर इन इंडिया इन दिल्ली टू मेक फ्रेंड्स और एनिमीज. फ्रेंड्स. आवाज नहीं आई. आवाज नहीं आई. यस. दिस टाइप ऑफ फ्रेंड. लवली फ्रेंड्स. ब्यूटीफुल फ्रेंड्स. सो हाउ यू मेक ए फ्रेंड्स. प्लीज कम. आप आए इधर. मैं आपके साथ फ्रेंडशिप करता हूं. आप लोग एक दूसरे से करेंगे. आए. एक दूसरे के सामने ऐसे खड़े हो जाए. दो दो का ग्रुप बना लीजिए. हाँ जी. कोई लोग ऐसे हाथ मिलाते हैं. जोर लगाते हैं पूरा है. कोई ऐसे हाथ मिलाते हैं बड़ा भारी एहसान कर रहे हो. ठीक है ना. तो हम फ्रेंड्स होंगे. हाथ मिलाएंगे. साथ में एक्सरसाइज करेंगे. लाइक दिस. दिस वे. दिस वे. लास्ट करके समय. एक करके समअप करें. ओनली वन. समअप करने के लिए जरूर. ओके. आप लोग इतना अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. सच ए वंडरफुल वर्क यू आर डूइंग. दैट ऑल ऑफ यू टुगेदर हेयर एंड डूइंग सच ए ब्यूटीफुल प्लेटफॉर्म. एक दूसरे को एनकरेज करने के लिए. तो हम एक दूसरे को एनकरेज कर रहे हैं तो शाबाशी लेंगे. शाबाशी हाथ से करेंगे। बैठ जाए सब लोग वापस, प्लीज बी सिट। अपना हाथ सीधा हाथ ऊपर करें। आज के सेशन का मैं लास्ट एक्सरसाइज आपको दे रहा हूं। अपनी पीठ को थोड़ा आगे कर लें, आगे, सीधा हाथ ऊपर, कमर अपनी आगे कर लीजिए, कुर्सी की बैक छोड़ दीजिए, आगे को सीधा हो जाइए। ओके, और अपने को शाबाशी देंगे, अप्रिशिएट योरसेल्फ। वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड, वेरी। दूसरे हाथ से भी, लेफ्ट हैंड से लेफ्ट साइड। बहुत सुंदर। हाँ जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप लोग यदि कांटेक्ट करना चाहें हमसे, वेरी सिंपल, www.haasyayoga.in। फोन नंबर इज वेरी सिंपल, 9999204444। कल आप लोगों को पंफलेट दे, 9999204444। जीडी गोयल जी हैं, राय यादव जी हैं, सुनील जी हैं। आप इनसे संपर्क करना चाहें, कोई भी सेशन करवाना चाहे, मिलना चाहे, मिल सकता है। थैंक यू ऑल, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जितेंद्र कोई जी। अच्छा सुनिए, हमारा समय खत्म होने जा रहा है, पर चलते चलते हमारे बीच में हमारे विश्व कल्याण गुप्ता जी हैं, जो मेरे क्लास मानसरोवर के साथी हैं। जब इनका वजन 135 किलो था, 400 किलोमीटर मेरे साथ पैदल गए थे, 400 किलोमीटर पैदल। वो कैसे गए थे वो ये खुद बताएंगे, हंसते हंसते गए थे। और मैं चाहूँगा, एक इनका बहुत ही बढ़िया योग है, प्लीज़ हाल में बैठे हुए सभी बहनों भाइयों से मेरा करवत प्रार्थना, शांत रहें सिर्फ 1 मिनट के लिए। जब बाकी दूसरी क्लास हो जाए ना, मर जाओ, जितना बोलना, हम कुछ नहीं कहेंगे भाई। कोई क्लास जब चले, कितना बोलना, हम क्या कहें, हम तो अपनी बात कर रहे हैं ना। प्लीज़, मैं कल्याण जी के लिए जोरदार तालियां बजाएं आधे मिनट के लिए, बस। धन्यवाद। अब कल्याण जी, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, इनका एक नहीं, टाइम नहीं है, प्लीज 1 मिनट प्लीज। विश्व कल्याण गुप्ता जी विश्व विख्यात कराटे आपको करके दिखाएंगे। प्लीज ध्यान दीजिए, बड़े सबकी निगाहें पूरी इनकी तरफ होनी चाहिए असली आनंद लेने के लिए। और जिसको आनंद नहीं आए, मुझे बाहर जरूर मिले, तो आनंद की गारंटी। प्लीज।
नमस्कार। आप सभी ने देखा होगा, खुराटे अक्सर बहुत सारे लोग लेते हैं और कहते ही हैं मैं कभी नहीं लेता, क्योंकि या तो उसकी पत्नी बता सकती है, या उसके साथ में सोने वाला बता सकते हैं कि उसके साथ रात को क्या गुजरी। खुराटे भी है ना, नॉर्मली लोग सोचते हैं कि खुराटे है, पर खुराटों की भी किस्म है। 5 किस्म के खुराटे हैं: सिंगल एक्शन, डबल एक्शन, डबल एक्शन विद फुस, डबल एक्शन विद विसल और डबल एक्शन विद बुदबुदाना। आप सभी ने केवल मेरी तरफ देखना है और इधर उधर ध्यान नहीं देना है। सिंगल एक्शन केवल एक ही तरफ से, डबल एक्शन आते हुए भी और जाते हुए भी। डबल एक्शन विद फुस। ये ज़्यादातर है ना, जिनके दांत सब बराबर हो जाते हैं वो लोग करते हैं। डबल एक्शन विद विसल, ये ज़्यादातर चौकीदार किस्म के वॉचमैन लोग हैं ना, इसको ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल करते हैं। सो भी लेते हैं, ड्यूटी भी पूरी कर लेते हैं। और डबल एक्शन विद बुदबुदाना, ये एक दफ़ा हम यहीं अपने मथुरा के साथ में गोवर्धन यात्रा पे गए थे, तो रात को हम परिक्रमा करके एक हाल में सब बैठे हुए थे। एक तरफ महिलाएं लेटी हुई थी, एक तरफ सारे जेंट हम बैठे हुए थे। तो हमारे एक मित्र की वाइफ वो कर रही थी, धीरे से बताऊंगा। अजी छोड़ो ना, क्या कर रहे हो आप।
जोरदार तालियां सभी के लिए। अगर किसी को हास्य नहीं आया हो तो कृपा करके जरूर मिलें, हम उसको हंसना सिखाएंगे। अरे एक बात और बताता हूं मैं, सिर्फ मनुष्य ही हंस सकता है। इस सृष्टि में कोई भी प्राणी हंस नहीं सकता। आज मोहन भागवत जी ने बताया देवताओं को भी मन नहीं है, देवता भी हंस नहीं सकते देवलोक में, वो सिर्फ भोग कर सकते देवलोक में। मनुष्य एक ऐसा प्राणी है जो हंस सकता है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद स्वामी जी, थैंक यू।
Namaste ji. One quick announcement. We understand that people are staying in different hotels, different places. Youth Hostel, Vishwa Kendra, and another Ibis Hotel. So you are requested to take your breakfast in the respective place. And 8 o'clock, there is a bus which has been arranged to bring you here at this venue. Thank you very much. आपका नाम? Anit. Anant Narayan. Anant Narayan ji has lost his wallet here. If it's found, please give it here at the stage, please. Thank you very much. Guna ji.
Namaskar. I should thank G.D. Goyal Saab for keeping everyone entertained, and Gupta ji also. But that part of entertainment is over. We are now in a very serious business. And we are going to have two prominent, prolific, serious academics who are going to come here. I am going to invite Professor Kapil Kapoor. Is Professor Kapil Kapoor here? Yeah. And Professor Debashis Chatterjee ji.
That the dinner will be here 8 o'clock. It seems not many people are having dinner here.
Yeah? 8 o'clock here.
No, outside in the lawn.
Yeah. I see few people standing at the back. There are number of seats here. Could you please come here, this side? And I request somebody to close the door also. If they want to come, serious people, let them come in. Thank you very much. We have respected Bhai Sahab, thank you. Let us do 3 ohms. Huh? It focuses our mind. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Respected Professor Kapil Kapoor is the Chancellor of International Hindi University in Wardha, Maharashtra. He was the former Professor of English and Sanskrit Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He was the Dean and then Pro-Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University. Many of you would have known about the Encyclopedia of Hinduism, the book. The 11th volume it was, and Professor Kapil Kapoor was the editor-in-chief of that big group. Give you a big hand. That was one of the best knowledge book about our Hindu Dharma. He is also the chief editor of Sahitya Academy sponsored Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics. It is a UNESCO project and that is under publication now. The second one is Professor Debashish Chatterjee, and he has taught leadership classes at the Harvard University, at the Indian Institute of Management in 3 places, namely Calcutta, Lucknow, and Kozhikode. He has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for the pre-doctoral as well as postdoctoral work, both at Harvard University. He has authored 17 books, including Timeless Leadership, which is very well known, and 18 sutras from the Bhagavad Gita, that book is. He has served as the Dean of an international business school in Singapore. Professor Chatterjee is former Director of Indian Institute of Management in Kozhikode from 2009 to 2014, and he is a tenured professor at IIM Lucknow. Now, I invite Professor Kapil Kapoor to take over from here. Thank you.
एक बार ऊंची आवाज़ आएगी आपको नमस्कार। ये स्वामी जी आपकी कृपा से ये मेरे जीवन की दूसरी बार है कि मैं अशोका होटल में आया हूँ। पहली बार बहुत साल पहले जेएनयू में मेरे एक कलीग होते थे, बड़े धनाढ्य कलीग होते थे और उनका नाम था धनेश जैन। तो उन्होंने हमको इनवाइट किया अशोका होटल में कि आप खाना खाने आइए। हमने कहा आ जाएंगे, एक शर्त है। क्या? कि मेनू कार्ड जो होगा उसे आप देख के ऑर्डर करेंगे, क्योंकि अगर हम देखेंगे तो हम राइट कॉलम देखते हैं कॉस्ट का, और जो पेज पे सबसे कम होता है उधर जाके कहते हैं ये खाएंगे। विक्टिम ऑफ माय मिडिल क्लास मेंटालिटी। तो मैं आज फिर इतने आलीशान बिल्डिंग में होटल में आया। हिंदू रीइमर्ज तो हो ही गए और हमारी सोच के हिंदू यहाँ आ गए। इतना सुंदर, इतना बढ़िया जगह के ऊपर। सब्जेक्ट बड़ा थोड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है, बट थोड़ी एम्बिग्विटी हमको लगती है इसमें। और कुछ प्रश्न मन में आते हैं। ये जो अंग्रेजी में री के साथ जो शब्द चलते हैं, English? English.
Many foreigners who would like to hear you, they want in English.
Okay. I was getting contrary instructions. All right. They want me to prove that I was professor of English. So I was saying that the title raises some questions in my mind, the issue. One, I'm a little chary about using words with a initial re. Revive, reemerge, resuscitate, reinvigorate, particularly when it is used in relation to our civilization and culture. Because we had long arguments in our academic life with very, very senior professors who would talk about reviving Indian culture, Indian civilization, and all that. And when one used to tell him, tell those gentlemen, very worthy of great respect, no doubt, that I think it is not the civilization which needs to be revived, it is we people who need to be revived. The civilization, Hindu civilization or culture, was never submerged, never. And there is no question of the Hindu civilization and culture re-emerging. What has happened is that there are two Indias. You remember Disraeli said there are two nations, the rich and the poor. India is two nations in several ways, many ways. Rich and the poor, English knowing India, non-English knowing India, rural India, urban India. And the vast India, vaster India, is not in this environment, this ambience. We are not in India. You want to go to India? You go 120 kilometers out of Delhi. Go into a small road from the main highway. Travel about 20 kilometers inside the countryside, and you find, and this is true of all over the country, whether you go to Kerala, you go to Northeast, which we happened to visit when we were doing our Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics, because Indian poetics is the poetics of Indian literature, and Indian literature is oral. 1576 languages according to the census, only 28 have scripts, but all languages have a literature. So you go to them, you listen to them, you meet them, and across the length and breadth of the country, the values that we are talking about, the cultural values, the human, the interpersonal, the social, they are very much intact, very much alive. They are more alive and intact among those people who have not been polluted by our education. Our education de-educates us. It de-educates us. And of course, there is a myth about education. Education makes us better human beings. Education will make us vote better, vote more intelligently. These are all myths. Education leads to development, again a word which one dislikes. This Darwinism that have been taught to us, whether it is individual Darwinism, social Darwinism, political Darwinism, or biological Darwinism. It's not a fact. It's not a fact. It derives from Genesis, where God said, "I have created a perfect being in you, and now the fish of water and fowl of the air are for you to enjoy." Since then, these powerful races have been submerging others, and have been dominating others, have been using their knowledge for power. But India, many Muslim historians, medieval, they tell us that the question that they ask themselves is, how is it that when even the combined Christian armies were defeated by Saladin on the gates of Vienna, how is it that the Hindus put up such a deathly resistance? It took 400 years for Islamic armies to march from Peshawar to Delhi. It took them only 30 years to convert and conquer Iran. The valiant martial Persians, they were captured, converted, defeated in 30 years. But from Peshawar to Delhi, it took 400 years. And even that period, because I don't know what we mean by emergence or submergence. Who was submerged? What was submerged? Was our intellectual systems submerged? Was our intrinsic faith in ourselves submerged? Or were we lost political independence? Maybe we were made poorer than we were at one time. But all through that period, sir, I think the Hindus were always alive, very much alive. The worst period of the subordination history, the worst period from about the 12th, 13th century to to 17th century when the Marathas started reasserting themselves. For those 500-600 years also, if you read that period carefully, you see how single individuals, small groups, they were always resisting, and there was always a resistance. But I should not go into all these, diversions of history. It will take too long. But re-emergence, I think Hindus who had become ashamed of being Hindus, who were given a feeling, our education, our young people who come out of the schools and colleges, at best they are ignorant, at worst they have contempt for themselves. It is those people who now feel that they can now stand on level ground with the Hebraic civilization, but mind you, the Vedic civilization, Sanatana, Jaina, Buddha, Sikh, has never been submerged by the Hebraic civilizations. The monotheistic, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, mentally. So perhaps what we mean is intellectual or systemic, that we perhaps lost. Yes, at one time, the armies never marched out of India, but ideas always marched out of India. The Silk Route was not just a route of trade. The Silk Route was route of Buddhist thought. The Silk Route in all the 4 directions, right up to Sri Lanka, and the South Asia, where the Shaivite system went. The Mekong countries, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, all these went. There was this time when that role that our civilization had, because the word Hindu, it is we all know the history, but it's basically a Sanatan Vedic civilization. What we should be talking about is the Vedic civilization. And all these systems, Pantha, they are growths from our Vedic civilization. Sanatan Dharma, and when one of the Sikh Taksals, they have Taksal, missionary, they invited me to speak on Dharma, the concept of Dharma, concept of knowledge in Hindu Dharma. I asked them, my Sikh brothers, what is Hindu Dharma? I don't know. You tell me. If you ask me about Hindu Dharma, the first Bauddhic Grantha is Rig Veda, and the most Arvachin, modern Bauddhic Grantha of Hindu Dharma is Guru Granth Sahib. You see, same structure, metrical text of knowledge, and that's a Rishiyon ki Bani, and Guru Granth Sahib is Bhakton ki Bani. Rig Veda is Punjab's gift to India. Guru Granth Sahib is India's gift to Punjab. You see, I think the worst time of our submersion, India produced great literature, bhakti poetry. The finest poetry of all over India was produced at the time when we think we were submerged. And we are re-emerging now. I don't want to, because I am supposed to chair and make only comments. I am very lucky. Devashish ji was in JNU with us. And it's such a coincidence that when I came here today, I discovered that an 1985-87 year batch student of JNU is today delivering the main lecture. The other part of this theme is, he's giving the main lecture, the keynote lecture. The other part of the theme is leadership. Whose leadership? Leadership of the Hindu mind, leadership of the Hindu culture and civilization. I think we never really foregone that. Remember, till 11th century, the Arab astronomers used to come to Ujjaina, and meet the Varamihir. Varamihir was in Ujjaina, and they used to come there. 6th, 7th century, Heliodorus became a Vaishnavite and built a column in Vidisha, which is still there. So the that leadership of the Indian mind is very much there. I think Obama ji, in all earnest, has told Bombay University students, if you had not invented the numerals, there would have been no computer, no computational technology. You see? And you know the Arab word for numerals, Hinse. Hinse means Hind-se. Hind-se. It's an irony. We call them Arabic numerals. And the sword, the Arab sword, with which Islam conquered Africa, part of Europe and Iranian world, that sword was made from steel made in Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka. And the steel is called Hinsi. Hinsi. That is the word, Arab word for the steel. I don't think we ever gave up. Even today, I think we are still the intellectual and moral leaders. The only problem is we have accepted the fact that if you don't have much money, if you do not have power over others, then you are submerged. In our tradition, knowledge was never acquired to hold power over others. The goal was to gain knowledge over your own self, to exercise power over your own self. The ultimate education, the Paravidya, you see, it is according to Shankaracharya, even beyond Vedas. Even the Vedas, Adi Shankaracharya says, do not contain knowledge. So knowledge lies beyond. So if you are confident, the problem is we have lost our self-respect. If we regain our self-respect, that we can gain only if, before teaching our knowledge to others, let us teach our knowledge to ourselves. Our teachers have not read. Our teachers do not know anything. They can't name 5 thinkers. They have not read a single book. And they argue that, we must introduce Indian texts into the universities. Ask them, give us the specimen. They have not read. So the problem is ours. We were leaders, collectively and individually. We have produced great world leaders. Great world leaders. Mahabharata, Krishna, Arjuna, Bhishma Pitama. I mean, look at them. What kind of leadership are we? The foundations of management is an alien discipline for us. Devashish, don't mind. You are a professor and director of Indian Institute of Management. Because managing others is a craft. Managing people. Managing means manipulation. You manipulate. And marketing means telling lies. You see, only if you tell lies about your goods, you succeed in selling it. But then, modern world, globalization is marketization. And the global world is a single market. Single market. From that Asian world, which was the substratum, was the Indian thought, it was a world of one mind. It has become world of one market. One market. But if you make a world of market, you can't survive for long. I'll come back again after. Now, there are 2 points I must say. You see, leadership, you can talk of individual leadership. A good teacher is a good leader. A good manager is a good leader. A good Mahatma who really teaches people by his example is a good leader. But there is also corporate leadership. Because in an organized society, when we move from the Rousseauesque state to society and from society to state, then we need corporate leadership, collective leadership. And I think one of the advantages, very few modern disciplines have anything to teach, but one of the disciplines that teaches us is corporate management. How you collectively, as a group, manage a large society in the interest of the people. And Devashish ji is going to talk about corporate management. And I will hear you with great interest. Please come. Thank you.
Professor Kapil Kapoor was my guru. And so as my teacher, I owe it to him to tell you the truth that he is the first teacher who gave me a C+. You now know why I got a C+. And then he remembered that, he revised that grade by the final semester to A-. And he said, मैंने ठीक से पढ़ा नहीं था आपका स्क्रिप्ट. मैंने कहा अगर पढ़ते तो D मिल जाता. अच्छा है कि अब नहीं पढ़ा है. No, he was one teacher who taught me Bharatiyata. In JNU is not the place where you learn Bharatiyata, but that's exactly where this counterpoint. He would talk about tribals in India, he would talk about Sanskrit in an English literature course. And I was just wondering at some point in time, it is possible, it is quite possible, to look at Bharatiyata not just as a sort of some rituals, some ways of, accomplishing structured actions, but Bharatiyata is perhaps a point of view. And that point of view was something that was instilled in me. And he was my first teacher who actually told me that there's an alternate world out there. There's a viewpoint out there which you must explore. Even while you are making a living, you have to look at making a life as well. And this is something that I'm grateful to you for. Henceforth, I will disagree with you. You will grade me later, but I'll be very, 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 very authentic. I'll tell you what my heart says. Sir ne bola ki khul ke bolo, so I'll speak something that I think is. Several years ago, this is my own experience, my first experience. I'm in Boston, Beacon Hill, looking at a career as a Fulbright scholar in MIT, and I step down from Beacon Hill, and I see a cab driver. I have to go to the airport, the flight is 30 minutes away, and he helps me with my bag, and he's very unlike a typical Boston cab driver, but he actually starts a conversation with me. The conversation starts with asking a question to me. The question is, are you an Indian? I said, yes, of course. And then he says, have you read Sri Aurobindo? I was very stunned. I don't expect a cab driver to ask me that question. I sheepishly said yes. He said, I don't know why you guys are in this country. This was 20 years back. This man lived 2,000 years ahead of America, and you've come here to make a living. I was truly ashamed. I was truly ashamed. And I do not know if that was one reason, but I did make it a point that I would embrace my country as my destiny, Bharata's destiny, and my mission would be globalizing Indian thought. And the modest attempt that I did in IIM Kozhikode was essentially that. We looked at a vision of IIM for 2047. So people ask me, that's far away. Why 2047? I said 2047 is when independent India, politically independent India, becomes 100 years old, and IMK is going to be 50 years old. It's a threshold number where we have to rethink another world. If we have seen globalization of the market, we have to think of globalization of the spirit. And is it possible that 2047 could be some kind of a chronological, standpoint from where we begin to look at what we must undo? So if you ask me, what is my operating definition of Hindu? It is undo. And I realize Hindus are the greatest deconstructors. They would have deconstructed even God and figured out there's no God out there, it must be inside. So all I'm asking is that if I have to globalize Indian thought and my mission is to contribute to this festival of ideas and experiences, then I would look at the word re-emergence as the coming together of a set of ideas, perhaps around a cosmic idea, and that cosmic idea is very, very critical for the world today, for the globe today. It is also going to be a counterpoint to globalization as we know it. Globalization as we know it is a system of coalition of political forces, some legal forces, some market forces. But that coalition is very fragile, as you can see. That coalition has not kept Europe united. That coalition has not kept North and South united. So there must be another kind of alchemy. And that alchemy is critical for us to explore. And so what is this one idea that has the potential? What is that one idea of India, of Bharatiyata, that has the potential of going global and cosmic, if I can extend that a little bit? That idea is that the human being is not a resource, human being is a source. See, I report to a ministry that calls itself Human Resource Development Ministry. I have a serious problem with that. Human being is not a bottle of water. The bottle of water here is a resource. The moment you drink that water, it ceases to be a full bottle. It is a waste material. But the spring from which this bottle is filled up is a source relative to this bottle. So if I look at a human being as a resource, and I stratify resources in terms of intelligence, in terms of capability, in terms of pecking order, social structure, then I do a great disservice to that extraordinariness of the source that every human being is. And here is a deep democracy. You look at the word soft power. We are hearing about India's soft power. And we are realizing that this is the soft power. Soft power is not, cultural evangelism, not Hollywood-style evangelism. Soft power is not just about going out there and selling culture, vending culture. We don't do that. I heard a great idea this morning. See, China has those China towns, so you have an India town. India does not live in towns, India lives in villages. Okay, I don't think India town will quite succeed, although I respect the idea. But see, the India's greatest gift to the world is essentially that, and we hide it. We are ashamed of it. I still remember I was in Boston in the Hindu Students' Council Forum. My cousin Kanchan started this whole movement in the United States. So he called me and I related a story to the group, and there are some young people, you might enjoy hearing it. There's a school where there's a quiz competition going on, and it's a school in England where the quiz master is asking a question to the children. Tell me who was the greatest human being of the millennium. And one after the other, kids from America saying it was Lincoln, and the quizmaster says, that's a good attempt, but not quite the right answer. A kid from France says Napoleon. The quizmaster says, well, that's also a good attempt, but not the right answer. And finally, this guy from Gujarat, a little kid in that school says, well, it was Jesus Christ. And the quizmaster said, oh, that's a great answer. Who taught you this? Was it your father or your mother? The kid says, first give me the prize money, which is 100 pounds. Then I'll tell you what the truth is. The truth is, in the heart of my heart, I know it is Lord Krishna, but business is business. Business is business. See, I would agree largely with Professor Kapoor. It was never submerged enough for it to emerge again. It was always there, but it was so well hidden. And I think this time of the idea of human being as a source, not a resource, is a very important idea. The divine in the human is essentially a definition of this great idea, an extraordinary realization of this great idea. Now it's a corporate Kurukshetra out there. Professor Kapoor has told me that I must talk about the corporate world a little bit, so I have no choice. Now, in the corporate world, most people, and you have a war room, this conference is a war room. Swami Vivekananda ji is such a dynamic, he's a karma yogi in the way he goes about doing things, but he also talks about a war room. So the war is out there, but corporate warfare is largely a warfare of ideas today. Okay? And in the warfare of ideas, the empire is the empire of the mind. It is not an empire of, it's actually the empire of the mind. Now, how do we win this Mahabharata, corporate Kurukshetra? It is through India's idea, Bharat's idea of leadership. Whenever I say India, I mean Bharat. So habits die hard. Vivekananda ji, you must forgive me, right? The idea of leadership in India is born out of two words. The two words is Rajarshi. Raja and Rishi. Now, who is a Raja? The Raja is the hard power of structures, systems, organizations, the hardware. And Rishi is the software, the inwardness, the interiority, the remarkable vision of the omnipresence of consciousness. And the shifting of the Raja, turning of the Raja towards the Rishi is India's unique contribution to the world. I don't think there is a model as well perfected. You know, Janak is a great example from the Indian pantheon. The man had two swords. Ramakrishna used to say he had two swords. With one sword, he will deal with the world. With another sword, he will actually look at, you know, his own evolution as a person. So if I'm looking at Rajarshi as the model, then we will see in corporate India, the biggest names in the corporate world. You know, I went to Harvard Business School and talked to the Dean of Harvard Business School, Nitin Noria, and I said, Nitin, I want to do a book with you on Gandhi's contribution to Indian corporate leadership. Nitin said, Devashish, have you done your research well? I said, what do you mean? Gandhi is everywhere. He said, no, but you know, most corporate leaders of India talk about Krishna, it's not about Gandhi. So if you do a book on Krishna, they will read it. Gandhi, they will probably not read it because there's enough of Gandhi already. So I wrote a book called Bhagavad Gita, 18 sutras from the Gita and in terms of its application of leadership, and I was surprised. I was surprised that of all my academic books, this was the most, you know, read, and people from around the world. You know, there was a American senator from Hawaii. She said, you know, I have just read the book and I was so, I sent a copy to President Obama. I think he should read it. I never saw the Gita in the way that the book presents. I said, I have done nothing. I've just taken the rishis of India. I have taken their great ideas and I brought this down to the corporate context. So if I look at corporate India's acceptance of the model called Rajarshi, I'll talk to you about one leader whose name is J.R.D. Tata, and if you ask me, how does J.R.D. Tata synthesize the model of the Rajarshi? I'll just give you one example. Tata is in Jamshedpur, Mr. J.R.D. Tata is in Jamshedpur, and one of his unit, the workers are very unhappy and they have struck work and they're shouting slogans. And Tata looks at the people shouting slogans and asks his HR manager, why are they shouting? He said, they're shouting, this is a very unjust way for them to shout. Their dues have been met, all the facilities have been given, one or two things have remained to be done, but they should not be shouting like that. Sir, don't worry about them, we'll take care, we'll remove them from here. Tata says, no, that's not the point. They have a right to shout, they're shouting, but the point is, why are they shouting under the hot sun? Why didn't you give them a shade and some nimbu pani where they can shout? But give them a decent place to shout from. And for the next 50 years, there was no strike in that plant. So I'm asking you to reconsider that if there's another way of humanizing the world of business, another way of looking at business, not from the perspective of profitability, systems, structures alone, but from the point of view of the evolution of the human being, I think India has a lot of contribution to make. So look at the impact of it all, the model of Rajarshi on the world at large. If you look at the democratic space of the world, 50% of people who live in democracy live in India, in Bharat. And you would easily assume that 50% of democratic tradition is Bharat and the rest. So we have a leadership role already. We actually own the democratic space of the world. I don't think there is a democracy quite like this. This is a deep democracy, the internal sovereignty of the Rishi. And that's the deepest aspect of Indian democracy. And that, the Rishi addresses the issue of potential. The Raja is performance. And if Rishi's potential has not been lived, performance will not happen. Rishi remains the potential, Raja remains the performance. Now, have we lost touch with this potential? And what is this Rishi thing? How can Rishi's potential come up as a very practical, pragmatic tool? And I am reminded of two dimensions of the Rishi consciousness. The one dimension is darshan. And the second dimension is sahyog. Darshan is the art of seeing. Now, imagine the Rishis were saying that you have to see the invisible. And then a typical example of the Rishi consciousness is that somebody brings a little salt and puts it in a cup of water. And the Rishi says, test this water. How does it taste? The guy says, it is salty, I can't drink that. Then the Rishi says, okay, put the same 1 spoon of salt on a bucket of water. Now taste it. Oh, it is still a little salty, not as bad. Then he said, now take this spoon of salt and put it on a pond inside. Let the water dissolve in the pond. Now, can you see if there is any salt there? And he said, no, I can't see the salt. He said, the whole consciousness is when you grow much bigger than your problem, the problem ceases to look like a problem. This is potential. Edmund Hillary goes to Mount Everest and he comes back and he says, well, it was an experience of a lifetime. And somebody asked him, why did you go up there? He said, because it was just there, unconquered. And what was your experience going up there? He says, Everest has a problem. He said, what problem does Everest have? He says, the problem with Everest is that it cannot grow up as quickly as I can. So I'll come back again. Believe me. And so the point I'm trying to make is this extraordinary orientation to human potential is the darshan. And darshan doesn't mean I'm seeing through the retina of the eyes. Darshan means this morning I heard Mohan Bhagwat say something interesting. It is the gaze that shifts. Just a chemical combination into Amrit. The gaze is the gaze of Srishti. And the gaze is Drishti, but Drishti itself is Srishti. The moment I reconfigure my Drishti, the moment I become a darshanik, not just a philosopher, an ordinary darshanik. 3 monks are walking across a football field. One of them sees a flag flutter. The second one says, it is not the flag that flutters, it is the wind that flutters. And the third one says, it is neither the flag nor the wind that flutters, it is the mind that flutters. All right? If you don't see the mind fluttering, you haven't seen it at all. And it is important that darshan has a connection with language. Interestingly, when an Englishman sees a red rose, he says the rose is red. A Russian is slightly better. He'll say the rose appears to be red. But a typical Sanskrit scholar will say this is a red vritti and a flower vritti. These two vrittis come together. You're not seeing a flower at all. You're seeing your own vrittis. That's all. That's the richness of darshan. Now, I'm going to ask you to consider what happens in every computer. Inside every computer, there is Intel. Intel inside. Nirmal Kumar of London Business School's research says there's Intel inside every computer. But inside every Intel chip, there's an Indian. There's a Bharatiya. Do you see this? Inside every Intel chip, there's potentially a Bharatiya contribution. Somebody in Bangalore, somebody in Chicago, somebody there, somebody in a small town. But Intel is India. And I'm saying this invisible India is the darshan. And you have to see India in this darshan. Okay, the second and the last point I'm going to make before I hand over to my guru, who is now got to grade me, I hope it is better than A-, is Sahyog. The last point is Sahyog. Now look at Kumbh Mela. I was with a professor of Wharton just 2 weeks back, and I was telling him about Kumbh Mela. He said, 100 million people in one place. I said, yeah, true. And what happens to these 100 million people? They slow each other down. Because if you are too aggressive, you will kill each other. They slow each other down. And with minimum of, these temporary structures created, and they manage to accomplish this impossible task of bathing 100 million people without too much of a trouble. Give me a comparative yardstick in the Western world where 100 million people ever gather at all. And then they take a bath at all. And then they return home safe at all. It's not possible for you to show this to me. And so if you see a Kumbh Mela, what has happened in Kumbh Mela is purpose. Beyond the obvious, the invisible things, the purpose is that I have to take a dip. And this dip is transformational. My faith says that, and I should allow others to take a dip as well, because they are part of the large. They're part of their variations of me. And it is very important then we look at Ganesh Chaturthi in Pune or Mumbai and Durga Puja in Calcutta, crime rate goes down. Why? Because during the puja there's a purpose larger than just going around. And even the crowd is organized. India's chaos and cosmos coexist. A French person came to Calcutta and he stepped out of the Grand Hotel and he came out and ran back to the hotel. The guy at the gate said, why did you run back? He said, there's a riot there in BBD Bagh, which is Dalhousie Square, right? BBD Bagh. Riot? The watchman comes out and says, this is not riot, this is office break. 1 person per square foot population density. You see, they pickpockets, they deal in business, but they get home. All of them get home. This is the nature of the organization. There is chaos. But there is chaos. There is order in that chaos, extraordinary order. And finally, Sahyog means the world of interdependence is upon us. And ecologically, biologically, physiologically, philosophically, we live in an interdependent world. I'm going to conclude with a story of interdependence. Now, my conversation is in California with somebody in California, and I'm in Boston. I always end with this conversation, which is very powerful. This conversation with a man who created what we today know as Visa, right? He created the Visa card. And it has transformed personal banking forever. And the name of the man is Dee Hock. So I'm having a conversation with him, and I'm asking him a question. The question is, how did you create Visa? He said, I redefined money. You redefined money? How? He said, I define money as human energy impulse that can be alphanumerically coded on a plastic card. And those impulses can be transferred from one continent to another, provided there are two things behind the transmission process. One is value, the other is trust. Any institution that has value and trust is potentially a bank. I said, that's a phenomenal definition. But how will an ordinary man who wants to use Visa understand your definition? Gyan is good, but where is the execution? Where is karma? Because we business people want execution. He says, the execution part is, I made the Visa card look like a business card. All you have to do is to punch that card in. Doesn't matter if you're a Rockefeller or ordinary feller. If you punch the card in, the machine will give you money, provided it trusts that you have money. So it's based on trust, not on hierarchy. I said, that's phenomenal. But how did you convince the 130-odd banks to accept your idea of Visa? It was a huge undertaking. He said, I had a mantra. I said, mantra is an Indian word. What does the word mantra mean to you? He said, anything that works is a mantra. I said, tell me, what was your mantra? He said, any time I saw a superior to me in rank, in hierarchy or talent, my mantra for him or her would be, you are great enough, but I'm as great to myself as you are to yourself, therefore we are equal. And he said, there was another part of the mantra. The other part of the mantra is, whenever I meet a person who is inferior to me in rank, in hierarchy, in talent, my mantra for him or her would be, you are as great to yourself as I am to myself, therefore we are equal. I said, did that always work? He said, no, it never failed to help. I said, it never failed to help. Why? He said, because my communication was to the highest possible person in that body. I said, Mr. Hock, I have learned something from you today, but I also want to give you, Indians are not beggars. I want to give you something. He said, what? I said, I want to tell you what Indian namaste means. He said, tell me. I said, you fold your hands. He folded his hands, probably. We are on telephone. And all your fingers point up, the thumb points towards the heart, and your head should be lowered down a little bit, that gesture. He said, then what? Then what? I said, you say that with all the knowledge in my head, the Visa power, the idea that came to your head, with all the knowledge in your head bows down to execution, because knowledge without execution is no knowledge at all. Knowledge which is not practical is no knowledge at all. Wisdom which is not practical is no wisdom at all. So you connect the knowledge with your hands, folded hands, and two thumbs are pointing towards the heart. Your heart has to be in this gesture. It has to be, unlike Indian Airlines Namaste, it has to be a heartful gesture. And with that gesture, with all the power in your head, cognitive power, planning capacity of the organization, with all the power in your hands and all the power of love in your heart, you silently acknowledge the divine that resides in you and me in equal measure. He was quiet at the other end. He said, that's as profound as I thought it could get. I said, if you're not a believer in God, you drop the word God, replace the word God with Visa power, the formula still remains the same. He says, how come? I said, when the execution system of the organization connects with its knowledge system and it is guided by the heart, the largeness of the heart, extraordinary things like Visa can come into being. This is Bharat's gift to you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I think in Devashish's very self-reflecting, almost meditatively anecdotal, recounting, showed very clearly the power of the Indian mind to inflect Western thought. You see, how the disciplinary formation itself, its fundamental assumptions. Devashish, if I consider my age and his, a young Indian, he was able to inflect modify and establish in a way the superiority of the Indian intellectual traditions. Now, if you have that kind of embedding in your mind, that kind of programming of your mind, how can you ever feel submerged? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much salary you get, how much salary the other one gets. You see? You also noticed that his discourse was characteristically Indian. Drishtant mode mein. He focused on darshan, drishya, drishti, very, very key words as he explicated. But the greatest of the Indian intellectual minds, Adi Shankaracharya and others, they composed their thoughts and they explained their ideas in the Drishtanta mode. Illustrative examples. Illustrative examples. And he was illustrating everything that he wanted to say by a Drishtanta, an actual experience. And I think the underpinning was, and that underpinning of his discourse is the underpinning of Indian thought. All human activity must be in the, I would again use that word, must be inflected by dharma. Whether it is knowledge, you become a king, you become a whatever, your all activity has to be inflected by dharma. Dharma is the key word. The word dharma, which has 32 meanings in Sanskrit, in the way we are using, in the way I am using it, in the way we commonly understand, dharma is the one-word constitution of an individual and also a state. You see, there is a dharma of the vagabond and there is a dharma of the king. And it was the one-word constitution by which India's polity was governed for longer than since Babylon. Our polity is older than Babylon. And we had that one-word constitution. His another very good reminder, in fact, since I was the last 4.5 years, I was in a rural girls' university. India lives in villages, people say that, and he's right, India lives in villages. But the problem is, as he highlighted, when we say whatever Chinatown, India town, our planning, our thinking is always urban-centered. Urban-centered. As a friend of mine from Northeast told me, sir, you are controlled by Delhi vision and television. Everything is television. You install computers in Delhi schools, you think all Indian schools have computers. So that urban-centricness is contrary to the Indian life. India lives in villages, but one very nice professor from Trichur told me, sir, but today, do the Indian villages live? India lives in villages, but do the Indian villages live? Because we have neglected them for so long. We make grand flyovers in a city like Delhi, and in the villages, a small bridge over Salej is not there. People walk through. We build so much, thousands of crores here, and 3 Salej ponds round every village will require only 63,000 rupees, to take care of the sanitation and all that. And when I said this to the development commissioner, who drives, whose official car is a huge Honda Accord or something, Toyota, whatever, I don't even know the names. I told him, sir, just 63,000 for every village and you will not have this Salej around the village. He said, this is your problem. You want government to do everything. I am basically now not young and I am an Indian. I didn't want to hurt him. But the thought that came to my mind was, you spend 60,000 worth of diesel on your car every month. You know, our rulers, administrators, they travel on the roads, highways. It's all question of administration and management. But if you are a good manager, if you think of the people. But if you don't think of the people, you go, you find ladies, you know, doing that hand pump, taking drinking water, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. They see it every day. They don't ask themselves, can we help? Have we ever tested their water, the water they drink? While in their own homes there is RO, you know, reverse osmosis. But they never want to find out whether these village people who 30 years ago could drink water directly from the canal cannot today drink water even after filtering it. So those, if we are planning like this, we are submerging ourselves. Our true self, we are submerging. Nobody can submerge us. If the kind of confidence Devashish has shown in his own knowledge systems, then I used to tell my senior colleague, Devashish ji knows, that you keep on telling us we are colonized, we were colonized, but I'm sorry, I never felt colonized. Never. And why do you keep reminding me that we were colonized? It's a state of mind. Even when you are politically ruled, even when there is vandalism, there is mass slaughter, massacres, we have undergone all that in 600 years. But as that Persian Muslim historian asked himself, how is it that Hindus put up such a deathly struggle? Because Hindus believed, you know, Al-Biruni, I'll conclude with Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni came with Mahmud Ghazni, and he was a very wise man, very discriminating, very objective. He said, these Hindus are different from us in 3 ways. 1, they are not afraid to die. Second, they always tell the truth. And 3, they are very proud of their knowledge. They are not ready to believe that any other nation has any knowledge. And sir, today, we are opposite of all the 3. We are fighting for survival through promotion and position and money. And we never tell the truth. We never tell the truth. Rig Veda says, may my speech rest in my mind, and may my mind rest in truth. But we always speak to mislead people, to spread falsehood today. And we were very proud of our knowledge. We never believed that Khorasan has any knowledge, Persia has any knowledge. But today, as one friend put it in one of the sessions, our young students, when they read the books, they think that all knowledge was created in the West. And we have no knowledge, nothing. So it's a question of, as I said, but sir, the ordinary Indian, thank God, the ordinary Indian, unpolluted by education, English education, is very proud of himself. He is not proud in the bad sense. It's not an Indian virtue to be proud. But he has great faith in himself, in his way of life. You see, I wish I had brought I also do PPT sometimes, neither power nor point. But I had made a small film slides of the life in a village near my university, daily life, 2011, not very far back. The morning starts with the lady feeding the cows and buffaloes. Then, there are old persons in the house, she feeds them. There is a sick old man in a house, and his bed sheet is changed, his clothes are changed, he is washed. But you look at the cot and the house, brick wall, very ordinary house. Not at all very well-to-do farmer. But the old man is looked after, so much so that the son has also given him the hookah. I asked the son that hookah he should not take because he's ill. He said, yes, doctor also said. But sir, all his life he has smoked and he likes it. He did not tell me, but I have put it near him. You know, this is searching for your happiness by searching for the happiness of others. That formula, that value exists. And therefore, I don't think it's a time to sermonize. There is no need to sermonize. I agreed, I'm very glad about the Kumbh also. Those of you who watched even the photographs in the newspapers, it is the world's largest self-governing crowd. Self-governing. Policemen are not needed. Crores of people. And they move in a line. And there was a photo of a man, army man, young man, carrying his 90-year-old mother on his shoulder. And he was standing in a queue, and the caption said, it will take him 3 hours to reach the Ganga. But he was doing it for his mother. And the mother must have a bath in the Ganga at this age. I tell you, how can this civilization be subdued, sir? You tell me. How can this be subdued? And this is after thousands of years of, people say, slavery. It's a history of, I tell you, vandalism, massacre, 800 million Hindus slaughtered, 80 million sold as slaves. The Hindu Kush mountain, at one time when I was small, I used to feel very proud. That Hindu Kush, see a mountain, a Himalayan range named after Hindus. Till I learnt Hindu Kush means the killer of Hindus. Because the people who were made prisoners, they were bound in chains as a warm country in their warm cotton clothes. They were taken to the markets in Uzbekistan and other places, and they moved through the Hindu Kush mountain, very cold. Half of them died there. But even then, the self-respect did not go. It is Macaulay's education which killed our self-respect. I know Sanskrit institutions were banned, Sanskrit teaching was banned. Even then, the tolls and pathshalas continued till the British arrived. Macaulay in the House of Commons, and this is unattested, you can read the proceedings of the House of Commons. He said that in India there is on the average 97% literacy and 1,20,000 tolls and pathshalas, schools. The Prime Minister is on record, he said, India has 1,20,000 schools and England has only 120. India has 97% literacy, England has only 27% literacy. Then Macaulay said, therefore, to subdue this nation politically and to rule the people, you have to destroy their backbone. And their backbone is their culture. They must lose faith in their culture. And that you can do by devising another system of education. That was the purpose. And that's what happened. We lost self. Those who underwent it lost self. Except, there was always self-criticism. 19th century liberalism, which came from there. We had people like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who succumbed, became Christian. We had people like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who said, no, Hindu society has the potential to reform itself from within. And we don't need any theological framework to be borrowed from the other system. And then Swami Dayanand, he said, why tell us what's wrong with us? Please look at your own self. And his critiques of Quran and Bible. Unfortunately, he wrote a critique of Guru Granth Sahib also, which had a very negative effect on the cohesion of the Hindu society in North India. But then, that is when Vivekanand came after this. And Vivekanand, ringing voice, we all are familiar, the Chicago Address, the ringing voice. He ignited the self-respect. A demoralized nation, Marathas defeated, Sikhs defeated, 1857 movement failed, and universities established, 3 English universities, education system replaced. There was no end to the demoralization of the Hindus. It is at that time, yada yada hi dharmasya. Somebody comes, and then Swami Vivekanand, and the resurgence started. We are a resurgent people right now. That's my belief. And with people, young people like him, I'm sure that I am right in thinking that we have re-emerged very strongly. Thank you very much.
We have 2 eminent professors here, Professor Kapil Kapoor and Professor Devasis. We thank for their deliberation, their talk. Please give them big hand. Hindu society needs these type of modern Brahmin and modern Pandit. They are the example of that. Once again, I thank them for coming here and giving talk.